In this video, I'm going to be talking about significant figures and also sort of why they're important. So before we get started on how to count them, significant figures are just a way of measuring how precise a measurement is. A measurement is. And are also a sign of how precise the measuring tool is. So in other words, how much can you trust the measurement based on how many digits it contains? So, for example, if I have these two measurements, 14 milliliters versus 14.72 milliliters, if I am comparing those two measurements with each other, you can see they're both measuring about the same volume. There's not really much of an actual difference between 14 and 14.72. However, the measurement on the right has more significant figures. This one here has a total of 4 significant figures, or sig figs, whereas this one here on the left only has 2 sig figs. If you know how to count the number of significant figures two measurements have, it's a really fast way to compare how valid those measurements are. All right, so there are 4 rules for counting significant figures, and most of them have to do with when to count zeros and when not to count zeros. So go ahead and pause the video and copy these 4 rules down in your notes. All right, so significant figures, counting sig figs becomes really easy once you've done a few practice problems. Let me go through these rules one by one so I can show you exactly what they mean. So the first rule has to do with non-zero digits, and it states that non-zero digits, numbers 1 through 9, count as significant figures. Anytime you have a number in your measurement that is not a 0, you count it. So if I have this mass that I weighed, 47.312 grams, all 5 of the numbers in that measurement, the 4, the 7, the 3, the 1, and the 2, all of them are non-zero digits, which means they all count as significant figures. So this one I would say has 5 significant figures. All right, so that's pretty straightforward. If it's not a 0, you count it. The second rule has to do with middle zeros. And I sometimes call these sandwich zeros because these are zeros that are in the middle of the number between 2 non-zero digits. So this rule states that zeros in the middle of a number count as significant figures. You count them. So if I have this measurement, 40.31 milliliters. So when I am counting the number of significant figures that this measurement contains, I count the 4, the 3, and the 1 because they are non-zero digits. And then this 0 is considered a middle zero because it is in between a 4 and a 3. It's a sandwich 0, okay? It's in between 2 non-zero digits. So that means it's counted as well. This would have a total of 4 significant figures. Okay, you count the 4, the 3, the 1, and then you also count the 0 in the middle. All right, so next, zeros at the end of a number. Zeros at the end of a number only count if there is a decimal point in the measurement. And it doesn't matter where that decimal point is. It can come before the ending 0 or after the ending 0, but it does make it so that you only can count the zeros at the end if there is one. So, for example, if I have this measurement, 100.00 grams, I count the 1 because that is a non-zero digit, and then there is a decimal point in the number, so I count all of the ending zeros. Sometimes these are also called trailing zeros because they're at the end of the measurement. Even though two of those zeros come before the decimal point, they're still considered ending zeros because there's no actual number other than 0 after them. So this would have a total of 5 significant figures. Right. Here's another example. 120 grams. Okay. This one here is not a very good measurement. So I count the 1 and I count the 2 because those are non-zero digits. However, this measurement has no decimal point, and because of that, I'm not going to count that ending 0. The ending 0 does not count as a significant figure. So this would only have 2 sig figs. All right, next. So let's say I have 1004.00 milliliters. Okay, so this one uses all 3 of the rules we've gone over so far. I count the 1 and the 4 because those are non-zero digits. I count these 2 zeros because they are sandwiched in between the 1 and the 4. They're sandwich zeros, they count. And then this number does have a decimal point, so I can count both of the zeros at the end as well. This number would have a total of 6 significant figures. Right, let's go over the final rule. This one's a pretty easy rule. The last rule just states that zeros at the beginning of a number never count. So zeros at the beginning of a number, you are only ever going to see if your measurement is a decimal, like this, 0.47 grams. So when it says zeros at the beginning of the number, it's really just talking about the zeros that happen before any non-zero digits are counted. So anytime your number starts with a 0 or starts with multiple zeros, you're just going to skip that entire part of the number and you're not going to count any of that. So for this one, I would only count the 4 and the 7. So it would have a total of 2 significant figures. If you had a really, really, really tiny decimal, like 0.00413 kilograms. For this number, this one has 3 zeros at the beginning of the number, so I don't count any of those. The only thing I would count in this measurement are the numbers at the end, the 4, the 1, and the 3. The 3 zeros at the beginning are all considered beginning zeros because there's no actual number that comes before them. They're leading the number. Sometimes these are also called leading zeros for that reason. Okay, so in summary, if it is not a 0, you count it. If it is a 0 in the middle, so if it is a sandwich 0, you count it. Even if there's more than 1 0 in the middle of the number, you count all of them. Zeros at the end of a number, trailing zeros, only count if there's a decimal point somewhere in the measurement. It can come anywhere in the number as long as there is one. And then zeros at the beginning of a number, leading zeros, never count under any circumstances. All right, so hopefully that made sense. Go ahead and get a head start on the practice and let me know if you have any questions. Bye.